So Holy Week is a time when we think especially of the passion and death of the Lord. And on Good Friday especially, the only gospel that is read on that day is the Gospel of St. John's. There's a reason why we call it the passion and death. It's not only the death of the Lord that we remember, it's also His passion. And His passion began when He started being rejected by His own people and by the Pharisees and many of the others. That was part of the passion too. So the Lord experienced what we sometimes experience too. Loneliness, rejection, upset, worry, and all those things that the Lord can relate to. The Stations of the Cross really represent the 2-kilometer way from the court of Pontius Pilate to Calvary. For me, the stations are very significant. There are 3 stations especially that remind me of the times that I faltered in my life, the times that perhaps I've made many mistakes. And on the other hand, there are 3 other stations among the 14 that show me that many times I have done good things in my life, just like many of you have. Let me tell you about the stations that help me to understand the times in my life where I have faltered, where I've been weak. Station number 1, Pontius Pilate believed that Jesus was an innocent man. He could have done something to help him, but because he was so afraid of what people might think of him, he washed his hands of Jesus' life. How often have I done that? And perhaps how often have you done that? When you could have done something to prevent something evil happening in our lives, but we were so afraid of what people might think of us or say about us that we just did absolutely nothing. We call those at Mass the sins of omission. Station number 4 is a beautiful station. It's Mary meeting her son on the road to Calvary. When I look at that station, I think of the times in my own life where I just haven't had enough time for my own mother, for my own family members, for my friends. Doesn't seem that they were important enough to me. Other things that I was doing seemed more important. And so whenever I look at that station, Mary meeting her son, I repent of all the times in my own life when I could have done so much for my family members, or even been with them, or even told them how much I love them and appreciate them, but failed to do that. In station number 8, as Jesus is walking to Calvary, He meets many women on the way, and they are grieving for Him. They are so overwhelmed by this grief that they're crying, and it's unstoppable, it seems. And Jesus says to them, "Don't cry for me. Cry for yourselves and for your children." Now, how does that represent a failing in my life? Well, our world is often plagued with so many difficult things. And sometimes I have a tendency to throw up my hands and say, well, there's nothing I can do about this. And so I grieve for the state of affairs that we're in. So sometimes in our lives, we have a tendency to just grieve over terrible things that are happening without doing anything to change them. And that, to me, is another sin of omission. So those are the 3 sins that the stations help me to understand. Now, I said that there was a good part to the stations, the times in our lives when we have done good things. And so I begin with station number 5. Station number 5 tells us about Simon of Cyrene. Now, Simon had to be compelled to help Jesus carry the cross. He didn't volunteer. Sometimes I don't realize that I could help someone in need until the person actually asks me, "Could you please help?" But then once I help, and maybe I do it grudgingly a little bit, once I do help, I realize how fulfilling that experience is to me. So that's number 5. Number 6, right after it, is one of my favorites. Veronica wiping the face of Jesus. Now, unlike the women of Jerusalem, this woman came up to Jesus. She could not change his fate. She could not stop the soldiers from persecuting him or putting him on the cross, but all she did was what she could do. She wiped his face with that cloth. And sometimes we can't do very much, but we can do something. And finally, the last station, the 14th station. That station reminds me of the times that I may have helped friends in need, or may have really been close to them and tried to do whatever I could to assist them. Because that's the station where Joseph of Arimathea who had bought this grave for himself, his sepulcher, if you will, he actually gave this great gift to his friend. It was like his last giving thing to his friend Jesus. We're not so much concerned about ourselves as we are concerned to help people like our friends who probably need our help and support the most. So to me, that station helps me to remember the times that I've actually done good things in my life. So there's the 3 times where I failed, there's the other 3 times where I think I've done something good.